Hey, eavesdroppers. Hope everybody's doing all right today. Um, so thanks for those of you that are clicking and listening. I appreciate that. If y'all don't mind dropping me a subscribe or a like in the videos, so I can reach the required amount from YouTube where I can start doing live feeds or live streams, whatever. I got to hit 50. I've got 23, so even if you never go back on the channel again, just hit subscribe so that I can go ahead and get that started. But anyways, one of the things that over the past couple of days that's come to my attention that maybe I want to talk about is how people block blessings for people. And it's one of the saddest things that I've seen happen throughout my whole life, is people not realizing that they're, some of the stuff that they do and, towards other people causes some people to block their blessings or to block other people's blessings. And that's a terrible thing, to do to another person or to do to yourself even. And I kind of tend to think that most of the time we block our own blessings, mainly due to, our egos. And so if you're not really sure exactly what an ego is, because I kind of wasn't real sure what it was and had to kind of do a little bit of research on it, so I could talk about it, is that basically your ego is your sense of self and the image that you want the world to see you as. It's your sense of I, of who you are. Your consciousness, basically. And just kind of going back in my mind over things over the years, I would say that most people, including myself, are big victims of our egos, especially if we have a toxic ego. And that's one of the biggest reasons why our blessings get blocked from us, And so when you have a toxic ego, it basically centers around, your self-image, your instant gratification. People who have toxic egos tend to gravitate towards things that are instant gratifications, that will, in a lot of cases, help them to not, like if somebody bruises your ego or, whatever, it just means that something's come along that's, it's hurt who your sense of self is. And whenever you go about trying to fix that or repair that, one of the things, and including myself, will fall into habits of seeking instant gratification and things that would boost our ego. And so I've noticed a lot of times with people who have toxic egos, they tend to feed those with toxicity. And that's like it is a true self of, or a true, like ego or whatever. But if you're feeding your ego with toxicity, which would be things that hurt other people, or, the instant gratifications of, let's say, substance abuse, or if you inflate your ego, you go around and you just sleep with a bunch of people because it makes you feel good about yourself and, or whatever, or, that's how you boost your ego. Well, that's pretty toxic, and then of course your environment. If you sit in a toxic environment, and that's what feeds your ego, be friends around you, or, just like I said, just a toxic environment where it seems like, it's easy to fall into the trap of having your ego repaired or boosted because everybody around you is doing the same thing. And it's just, if you're feeding your ego from a toxic space with toxic activities, via toxic people around you helping you do that, like, I mean, you're not really promoting a healthy self-image to yourself, for starters, but you trick yourself into it because that's the environment that you're in, telling you it's okay to do some of those things. And so, and a lot of times I think people don't realize that it's like that until they actually get out of that toxic environment and away from toxic people and away from the people that encourage us to be, that womanizer, or that fun girl, that'll just, that's a good hookup or a booty call, or, whatever it is, or to be that person who always shows up with this, with the substances, and, they just make it real easy to fall into the trap of your ego becoming toxic for yourself, and it's hard for you to see the error of your ego. And so that's one of the biggest things, and it comes along with like pride and arrogance and like with narcissists, I know it's like an inflated self-importance, Well, I mean, the way I see it, everybody's important in one way or another for one reason or another. And I just think that a lot of people, they fall into the trap of a toxic ego, as opposed to having a healthy ego, and the difference. A healthy ego is somebody who will, learn from their mistakes, admit that they made a mistake, or take accountability for the things that they do that harms other people or harms themselves or blocks blessings. And I can think of quite a few situations that I've observed and been involved with myself where, I blocked blessings for myself out of pride, and stubbornness. And I've witnessed other people doing it, to other people. Like, so whenever you find yourself in a situation where, let's say you have an opportunity, that's a good opportunity. It might be scary, take you out of your comfort zone, but you can't grow unless you get out of your comfort zone, and being able to do that and basically jump your timeline. It all kind of ties into block blessings. And, here recently, the past 3 months, I made a decision to jump the timeline that I was in, to break all the toxic patterns that I had going, or that I was a part of, and because the only person that you can change is you, and that mainly, if to change, you've got to recognize the patterns, and you've got to recognize what isn't working, what hasn't worked, and, the repetition of patterns that don't get you the results that you may not even realize you're looking for those results because you've never had them before, and it's basically that's blocking your blessings, for yourself, if you don't want to get out of your comfort zone, if you're completely comfortable in that toxic environment, doing those things, and being that person, even if it's just for the sake of the other toxic people around you. I've just learned that you don't generally make any improvement like that. And you inevitably block blessings that will bring you things that you may have consciously always wanted, or even subconsciously didn't even know you wanted. And so I think one of the worst things that people can do is block their own blessings, by holding on to toxic patterns and to holding on to past timelines and not letting go of things and not moving forward in life for your own growth. Now, I'm not saying that anybody, if you're completely fine with being that person or being in that situation or being in that toxic environment, well, that's, then I'm not talking to you, I'm not saying this for you, but I have a hard time, imagining anybody, wanting to be satisfied with living a toxic life where it just seems so dead end, and you repeat the same cycles over and over and over, maybe with different people, but they all have the same toxic traits as you are. Because at the end of the day, you will attract to you what you are in life, so if you tend to be somebody who, let's say, who's a real spiritual person and has a good moral compass, or what society society considers a good moral compass or whatever, then that's what you'll attract to you. But if you are a person that you sleep around and just kind of out there, being a hoe, or you indulge in substance abuse, and maybe you get an ego boost or whatever from cheating on your partner or whatever it is, and you're okay with that, but just know that those are the type of people you're going to attract to you. Always. And so I think sometimes in life we attract somebody who has those qualities, but at the same time they have this ego that this will override it at times, and then inevitably block their blessings because they don't want to recognize it, or they don't want to change it, or I know for a long time I was kind of the same way. You don't want to let go of things that you have true love for, or people or places or situations, because you care a lot about those people. I'm not saying that people with toxic egos don't love, they absolutely do, but if it's a matter of, of loving somebody and hanging on to a toxic ego, a lot of times the toxic ego wins out, and that really sucks, because having somebody in your life that truly loves you and that truly loves you back, or that you truly love back, that's a blessing, or be given an opportunity to go in a different direction that doesn't have any of those things. It might be really scary, because you won't have those people around you that you're so codependent on, so to speak, to boost your ego, or to, whatever it is that makes your ego feel better about you. The other thing that I have hopefully never participated in, but I'm sure that I have in one way or another at one point or another, but I do know now that, and I have over the past few years, I've really strived not to be a participant in this type of blocked blessing activity, is how other people will block you from your blessings, just for simply the fact that they're not, because in order, let's say if you're presented with a potential blessing, and you're going back and forth on it, and let's say this blessing requires you to leave your toxic environment and leave. So, because, whenever you ascend or you level up or whatever, you grow, it's a whole new path that you have to take. And you can't necessarily take everybody with you, because not everybody's ready to be on that path. And everybody's path is individual, to their own. So you can't take everybody with you. But if you're presented with a situation where that's a possibility, and you're thinking, man, I just really hate where I'm at, and I just keep getting wrapped up in these stupid life cycles, my relationships never work out, my jobs never stick, I'm not happy in my work, I'm not happy, with where I'm living or what I've got, I really want better. And you're presented with a situation where you'll have that better stuff, but it requires you to leave all the comfortable stuff behind. Like, you have to jump timelines, You got to leave all that other stuff in the past in order to move forward into your future. I mean, it's just the way it is. And not everybody can go with you. And what I've noticed happening is that you have people that are codependent upon your presence in their environment, or your friendship, or your relationship with them for some reason or another, be it, it's like, let's say if it's your best friend, well, and you and your best friend, your party buddies, you've known each other for a really, really long time, and you've always been able to rely on each other for this or that. You go out, you chase the tail, and You go to the bar and you party it up, and they're just your best running buddy, and you've known them forever. But you can't take them with you on this path, you know? And you know you're really going to miss them, and so you discuss it with this person. And this person, if they're a really true friend or somebody who really cares about you, they'll say, you know what? I know I'm going to miss you, and I know I can't go with you, but man, that's a great opportunity. You should totally take that opportunity and go and do what you feel like you need to do to better, you know, for yourself. Even if that person can't go with you, you know, that's a blessing to have a person like that, you know, that would encourage you, even if it meant that they wouldn't see you again for a long time, or maybe even ever, or, you know, whatever. And so it's a blessing to have a person like that, to push you towards your other your other blessings. And so, you know, no matter what, I've always tried to, in all my relationships and stuff, whenever this is, you know, even, you know, and especially like here lately, it's really just been like breakups and relationships. You know, I've kind of been run through a few times, you know, in my relationships, you know, and I always tried to be positive about the whole thing, you know, like no matter how it went down, you know, or how they left. I mean, there's really no good breakup, but there's some ways to break up with people than others. But a lot of times the breakup just ends up being real foul. You know, you get cheated on, or, you know, some type of betrayal happens, or, you know, whatever. And a lot of times with people, that tends to, like incite bitterness. And I know in my case, even, you know, I've been jealous, you know, of my ex-person's new person, or whatever it was at times, you know. And I have really worked with myself over the years to not be that way, you know, to just be like, you know what, look, you know, the relationship, the friendship, the whatever it wasn't working out for us. You know, obviously this person wasn't happy, or they wouldn't have been seeking whatever they were seeking outside of our friendship or our relationship or whatever. And so I really and sincerely, you know, hoped that would work out for them, and that was what they were looking for, and that it would be a blessing for them to go. You know, and did everything in my power to release that person and to disconnect and not be a problem, you know. But I'm also not going to sit here and say that I haven't been a person that didn't see what was, you know, that I didn't see what was actually really going on with the other person, and, you know, sitting there and like, you know, I'm not going to say I never pointed out certain things about the other people, but it's just like, hey, if that's what you want. Maybe you're being a blessing to that person and helping them to grow and to be better in their life, you know, or whatever it is. You know, you can't change people, but, you know, sometimes I think that people are more willing to make certain changes to themselves for betterment, because they have a really good reason to do that, you know. And that just might be so that they can be better for another person, or, you know. But anyways, I've really tried to be that. Now, I'm not saying I have in every situation or all the time. You know, like I said, you know, I have had my own bouts with things, but I really do try not to talk shit about people or whatever. And, you know, I try not to block anybody's blessing that way. You know, I don't really go behind anybody's back and badmouth anybody, you know. I mean, I might tell them about how the situation went down. If it went down how it went down, then I tell that part of it. But I don't make anybody out to be any worse than what they were, and I don't make myself to be any better than what I was, you know. I mean, I always really tried to stay within the parameters of what was really going on, whether or not it made me look good or bad, or the other person look good or bad. Because when you do that as a person, if you are in a situation and you have a friend or whatever you got going on, and you see that this person's being presented with a blessing, and you know you're gonna lose that person, and you sit there and you do things, or you say things, or you don't encourage them. You're just like, oh man, you don't want to go to that job. It's gonna be this and that, and, you know, might be more pay, but it's more hours a week, or, this, and you just kind of discourage them, because maybe that person getting a new job was like, that was your wingman, and nobody, you're not ever going to find anybody that will work in that position or that job with you as well as the person, that's leaving, and so you just kind of overlook the fact that it was something that was presented to them that will better them, even though it doesn't benefit you. And so I have noticed that people will do that, it's kind of like I talked about in good advisors and bad advisors. If two people, if a person isn't presented with the same opportunity or doesn't have the same experience in something, that might not be the person that you want to talk to. The other one is what I have run across has been situations where and really these situations shouldn't even happen, because they just shouldn't happen. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you're unhappy in that relationship and you don't, so you want to step outside the relationship, and maybe you don't exactly, break up with one person before you start seeing another person. Well, then all of a sudden you've got one or the other person, or possibly both. If they find out about each other, then you've got people, talking all kinds of shit about each other, and, saying things, or sometimes even possibly revealing things that shouldn't be revealed or even brought up, after the fact. And that's because they know that if this person goes towards the other person, that you're going to be losing whatever benefit that you have of that person being around, be it their love, their financial support, their companionship, their, maybe they're the one that has the car. If they leave, then you don't have a car, or, whatever it is. They know they're going to lose that, or they're not going to have access to that. And that's not love either, though. If you're doing things or saying things or whatever to dissuade somebody from going in a direction that really would be healthier for them, or in a better, and at least in a person's mind, a better situation for them. We never really know until it comes down to it, but, I got my own opinions about that when it comes to relationships, but, being able to release somebody to go find their happiness, regardless of what the circumstances are, that's a pretty big thing to do, and it doesn't make you a weak person, doing that. But sitting there talking them out of it, or trashing another person to try to change their mind about that person, or give them reasons to not go in that direction, that's absolutely blocking people's blessings on both ends, on all ends. And you never know, doing that in that aspect of being that person, that bad-mouthing person, you might be blocking your own bad-mouth blessings, just with your inability to release that person. And so this is something that I have noticed, and is actually, and I'm going to probably post about it in another video, not this one, but that I have noticed come up several times throughout the course of my last relationship. And throughout other experiences in my life of talking to people, and people coming to me for their advice, I've really tried to stay neutral no matter what the situation was, and try to give them the best possible, you absolutely should have your blessings, don't let nobody talk you out of it just because of what they're losing. People will block your blessings because they know they won't benefit from it, They know they won't be able to cash in on it. And if it was a relationship you had with somebody that was codependent on something that you provided for them, and you accepting the blessing, or you going in the direction of whatever you're being blessed with or whatever, means they'll lose that, then, I've seen it happen time and time again. They'll sit there and they'll poke all kinds of holes in it and turn it into something it's not, or sit there and really make you feel like it's a bad idea. And sadly, we go to people for advice on these things that will do that. And so, anyways, I'm going to close this up because I'm already at 25 minutes, and so it's pretty long. But I just want everybody to be aware that this does happen. So don't block your own blessings by having a toxic ego. Work on your ego. Practice having a healthy ego. However way you do that, and you can do it through therapy. Mostly self-reflection. You got to be willing to look at yourself and realize the things that you do that are toxic, and that which would be things that hurt you and hurt others, or, whatever, go to, like I said, go to therapy or whatever, and not feed that particular type of ego with more toxicity. And then on the other one is don't allow other people, to block your blessings by talking you out of what would be a good choice for you. 'Cause that's really sad, just because it was a choice offered to you and not to them, or, whatever they'll be losing. I mean, they will do it, and I have seen it. I have experienced it. I've seen it. I have hopefully never done it. I really don't think that I ever have, other than, the little bouts here and there, but I really do try to work on not being that way. So, but anyways, I'm going to go ahead and close this one out, and it's a nice day today. Real pretty outside. I think the neighbors are getting some work done, so you might be able to hear their construction over there. But anyways, I just want to thank everybody. Don't forget to, if you made it all the way this far, please like, subscribe, share, whatever. I am trying really hard. I've got 50 subscribers. Y'all just haven't subscribed yet. So come on with it, so I can start doing live streams. I think that'll be kind of fun for everybody. But anyways. So for all you guys out there listening, eavesdroppers, I really do appreciate you sitting there listening to me talk to myself in the dark.